Welcome to Let's Talk Transportation, a podcast series of the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization, also known as the MPO. We talk about the ins and outs of transportation in Broward County and all of Southeast Florida, why it matters, how it works, and the challenges and opportunities related to achieving great transportation. I'm your host, Greg Stewart, Executive Director of the MPO, and I'm joined by
Lori Baer, Port Everglades Association.
Lori, it's great having you on today. We're going to talk a lot about Port Everglades and its past and its future, but let's talk a little bit about you. You came to Southeast Florida. Were you from here or?
Greg, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love talking transportation, and I'm about as Broward County local as you can get. I went to Nova High School and lived away for a number of years in Washington, but I've been back for many, many years, and I wouldn't live anywhere else.
You know, one of the things, and our last guest too, we're from here. I'm from here as well. And, you know, the knowledge of this place and the way it was, I still see things that I remember when I was younger. When I go out to Plantation, I still see cows. When I go out to Sunrise, I still see, orange groves and mangroves. I still see this in my head. They don't exist any longer. They're shopping centers and, large planned developments. But the reality of having that in your brain, you know what this was. I don't think it's bad. I think we've done really well. What do you think as somebody that grew up here?
Well, I agree completely, because when I went to Nova High School, it was farmland. I mean, honestly, a cow pasture. We had a 45-minute ride on the bus, and there was just nothing out there. And I am so filled with pride now when I see the whole Nova complex, the high school and Broward community and the fabulous NSU and the law school. And my niece was in the performing arts out there. And it's just been a really, really exciting path to watch.
Yeah, and knowing that this has occurred, and you think about now, I'm going to go over to the port, the association that you're representing, and you know that the port was a driving factor in a lot of this. Everybody thinks, oh, the growth down here was because, folks were retiring and moving into. There was businesses here. There was economic activity that also brought people to Broward County, to Southeast Florida. This is actually someplace that was very dynamic. And before we started in the recording, we were talking about the cruise ships that used to come into Port Everglades. And who would have thought it would have gone from 1 to 2 cruise ships on a season to now? How many are coming into Port Everglades?
Oh, it's mobbed and getting bigger. And Greg, I feel very happy that you acknowledge the role of the port and the port industry and the companies that operate on it. It has always been a important, thriving seaport. Also for military, that Port Everglades has always been the port that services Coast Guard and Navy. It's always been the major petroleum port, servicing airports in the region, servicing a third of the counties in our state. That's
the amazing thing. Do the folks that work at the port recognize the impact they're having on so many communities? Because just on the gasoline side and the petroleum, we're serving Naples and we're serving Fort Myers and we're serving all of Southeast Florida, all the way down to the Keys and up to almost up to Port St. Lucie. So, do they realize
I think they do, and there's a great sense of pride. We love the workforce at the vast workforce. We have many people that work on and with the cruise lines and the cruise ships. Many people that handle the cargo. These are good jobs. Real proud of our labor workforce, and it's one of the few communities that has a trained, skilled, plentiful workforce, and that's what it takes to keep it going. And we talk a little bit about the history that we've seen as 30, 40 years here.
Right.
Never before have I remembered it having so many people. That's, one thing that I have absolutely noticed. It's undeniable. And so now, we're focusing on how do we move people around the port? How do we get them to the port and between the airport and the seaport? And, these are the things that so many jobs and livelihoods are tied to the port. I mean, really, I think if you talk to just about any household, they'll say, yes, my uncle was, in the ILA, or, my, sister has been with a cruise line for 30 years.
What do you think, basically, if you look at it, we have this video we do called The Magic of Freight, and it talks about how things get here, to your home. How does that home delivery, the Amazon services today, how do those items come? We used to, when we were younger, you'd go to Jefferson Wards, you would go to places to go buy things. Now things are just showing up at your front porch, but they're all coming through Port Everglades. They're all coming through delivery services that all tie back to what is Port Everglades. Do you ever have conversations with some of the folks that are operating at the port going, do you realize the magnitude of the products that are being pushed through?
We do, and really the first indicator of the economy. A lot of people think it's jobs and housing starts. It's not. It's the volumes at the port, and more importantly, what's moving through the port. And I know this. The ratings agencies are calling us, and it's, if you're seeing construction material, lumber, cement, steel, if people are taking cruises, and now if you see a lot of appliances moving through, that resorts are being developed. All of that focuses right through the port, and the workers that make it happen are skilled and trained. Greg, I would love for people to see the giant gantry cranes at the port, and how fast they are, and it's really a marvel of moving, whether it's cargo or passengers, how efficient it is, how swift.
Those gantry cranes, that's one of the things that it's so amazing too, because they're not standard size. They're a little bit lower to accommodate because of the runways at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. And if you think about it, they're all custom. Each one of those have to be custom designed and built. Most of them come from China. We do know that. But I mean, the fact that they have to go through the efforts to just bring them here to fit, and then understanding that that's actually an expense that gets, basically borne upon all the folks operating at the port. How do your association deal with that shared responsibility?
Well, the members of Port Everglades Association are the major users of the port. So it's our terminal operators, our logistics providers, shipping lines, and cruise and cargo, and also a lot of the construction and engineering trade. Right. So the cranes are absolutely essential to those operations. Way back, way back, before the advent of containerization, right. It was, more basic and traditional labor of handling at the dock. But now the logistics are so sophisticated, and it's essential. It's absolutely critical to the port. Any major port has to have that.
I had the really lucky opportunity to go to Hong Kong, and I got to tour the port there, which is amazing with the number of gantries and the containerization, as you said, and how that just is able to move the product from one place to another. Do you think that with the containers, are we seeing now a lot of, I remember that a few years back, there was an issue that the containers were overwhelming the port and they weren't being moved back out. Are we seeing a balance to that now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I also had the great privilege of touring the port of Hong Kong.
I wish we were together.
I'll tell you, I never forgot it. I mean, I could have just sat there and watched it all day long. But I would like to see us have more cranes, and I think the users would too. I mean, there's a demand for time on them, and the combination of a skilled workforce with the automation is what makes you efficient, is how quickly, you can move and get it in and out. Again, I think I'm showing my age and longevity, but, way back when, like when the first cranes came in, it was, it was controversial. People are like, oh, what are we going to look up in the sky and see that? And, whatever. And, and now, now people
take it for granted, right?
Certainly take it for granted, accept it, and like to see it, and like to see that. And you're right, because one of the great attributes of Broward County Seaport is its close proximity to the airport, and also to it has a short channel to the open ocean. So those are really good attributes. And because of the runway, as you noted, the cranes do have to be, what they call low profile, right? They work. They found a way, and they're really magnificent.
As we sit here in the boardroom and you look out the window behind you, there's actually the runway, and we just clear the runway just barely. And, this is no different than a crane. And it's just like, you can make it work. This building has been here well over 30 years. That hasn't stopped the Fort Lauderdale executive from expanding and becoming the powerhouse that it is. It won't stop FLL from being able to be a great powerhouse either. The interesting thing that you brought up is people get accustomed to it. You go, and there's so many controversies here in South Florida for some reason. People get upset about a bridge. They get upset about this. They get upset about that. And then you go, but look, you have this already. The lights at the port are spectacular. I have friends that live in some downtown Fort Lauderdale condo units that face south. All night long, those lights are on because the port is 24 hours. Wonderful. They don't ever complain about the lights at the port. They knew about it. Do you find the irony in some of that stuff?
I think most people, like to see America at work, and yeah. I think most people like to see that and have an appreciation for what is getting done. I can't stress enough the jobs that are associated with it, and now. It used to be that people just through some fortuitous circumstance fell into the business, but now we're seeing curriculum in universities that's, teaching logistics and, operations of things. And, so again, it just shows what an asset it is.
So one of the things, former port director Jonathan Daniels and I had a conversation a while ago about training for the gantries. How important that is. And that's not necessarily something that is just something you go to university for. And we had a conversation about the folks, the kids, the children that are out in central Broward that, they all have Game Boys. They all have these, they're able to manipulate things with their fingers, which is basically what you're doing on a gantry, he was explaining to me. And he's like, there's this huge untapped population of potential employees for the gantry workers and for the logistics side of moving the freight around the port. And, because of ironically, he told me like video games are actually a good thing.
I hadn't thought of that, but, there is an aptitude, I think, for, I would encourage any young, girls and guys, I would encourage any of them to look at it. And I have to just tell you one quick story.
Sure.
One day the phone rang in the office, and it was someone who said, I need a job. Please help me. Just please. There's got to be a company there. I said, well, let me call over to Crowley, one of our users. And Crowley said, look, if he wants to come clean out the containers, if he wants to sweep out containers, send him over. And he did. He took the job. And 2 years later, a knock at the door, and it's a young man, and he says, I don't know if you remember me or not. You helped me to get in at Crowley, and I just made it as one of the crane operators. It's the most elite position, and you had to compete for it. And he said, I'm set for life. I love my job, my company, my port. And I've never felt so proud as hearing that. So happy for him.
That one moment and helping the community. And that's what, again, that goes back to the commitment, because you made a commitment to this place, to Broward County, to the port, to our people, our residents. And that one story kind of encapsulates one of the reasons why I looked to you and I said, if anybody deserves to be honored, and that is actually probably one of the most significant statements they can, because our idea of honoring you was because I know your commitment, but that level of commitment that goes so deep that now this person probably got to raise their family, probably got to do all these incredible opportunities just because you were able to make a connection.
Greg, I can't thank you and Broward MPO enough for making me one of your honorees, and I'm in very special company with it. Over my career of many decades, I had the privilege of working with a number of MPOs around the country. I've always been a big fan of MPOs, and I can tell you most sincerely, I've never seen a better one than right here in Broward County. And thank you again for making me one of your honorees.
From the heart, thank you. So before we cut off and move on to the next opportunity, I actually wanted to ask one last thing, and I think that's kind of really fascinating. You kind of said that you were, your path to Port Everglades. You explained you grew up here, went up north, came back. What made you specialize in ports?
When I was in Washington, I worked at the American Association of Port Authorities, which represents deep water ports throughout the Western Hemisphere.
Okay.
And I also worked at Port Miami for the first 12 years of my career. And, people in the business say it's in your blood forever. And I would recommend it to anybody. I'm proud to tell you I was Florida's first female port director. And now there's many, many women sitting in the captain's chair, and it's a field wide open. And I was so lucky that I fell into it. You don't get up in the morning and say, gee, I want to go work at a port. But if you make your way there or find your way there, you'll never want to leave.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. I did lie. I do want to ask you one other thing. The impact of the Panama Canal. And I do know that there's been some real issues recently of it necessarily running out of water to keep the locks full. I had read recently that Mexico has built a railroad that connects both sides of the isthmus there. Is that going to have impacts to Port Everglades?
One thing I can tell you about shipping is the industry finds a way.
Okay.
They will always start seeking additional and alternate routes. They'll be combining land use with water.
Right.
I'm not ready to say that the Panama Canal is toast forever. It's definitely being met with a challenge, and but they're also working through that. The industry is incredibly adept at finding ways because the cargo has to move. The cargo has to move. It's got to get to the population centers, and it finds a way.
I really find that, maybe there's probably going to be a way for them to push salt water into the lakes. Who knows how they're going to end up doing it. But it's like, that's a very encouraging thing. And the reason I asked this is, 40 years from now, we're not going to be here, but other people will be. And I want them to realize that we were thinking about it then. It wasn't like something that just all of a sudden popped up on their map and go, oh, how do we get freight from one location to another? People
will look back and see what we are grappling with now, and I hope it helps them with their challenges.
That's the
40 years down the road.
Lori, thank you for joining us today. We'll look forward to honoring you in March, and we'll definitely be bringing you back on to talk in the future.
Thank you. This has been an absolute treat.
The Let's Talk Transportation podcast is produced by the Broward MPO, where every day we fund and implement projects that move people and goods, create jobs, and strengthen communities. Learn more at browardmpo.org and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Speak Up Broward. If there is a transportation topic you'd like to know more about, let us know by sending an email to info@browardmpo.org. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by MPO employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the view of the MPO or any of its officials. For complaints, questions, or concerns about civil rights or non-discrimination, or for special requests under the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact Carl Ema, Title VI Coordinator, at 954-876-0052 or EMAC at browardmpo.org.